I've done cold approach for the last 10 years, and I'm about to break down all of the different types of shit tests that a woman will give you. And I'm gonna be explaining exactly what needs to be done in order for you to pass these tests. I've already helped over 700 clients pass every shit test imaginable, and by the end of this video, you'll be able to do the same. And you can see here on the screen that I've labeled the different categories of difficult test, meaning this is the most advanced or hardest to overcome, medium test, light test, and then below that we have not even really a test, it's more just blatant disrespect. And then even below that, I would just call disinterest. Like, she's actually not testing you, she actually is just not interested. But a lot of guys interpret those last two categories as shit tests. And so I wanna differentiate all of these different concepts for you guys. That way you have clarity on how to respond in these moments. So let's get into the first one, which is where the girl is either posting or talking about another man. So that means on Instagram, she's actually posting this other guy while you guys have been talking, or if you're hanging out with the girl in conversation, she starts bringing up this other guy. A lot of girls will actually do that in a very subtle way. They won't blatantly talk about this other man that they've been dating. If they're doing that, then that is just straight up a sign of very low interest. Like, clearly she doesn't care if you know that she's dating this other guy, and so she's just kind of blatantly talking about it. She's not even considering you as a potential mate. And some women will even do that as a way of kind of indirectly, politely shutting you down, because they start talking about this other guy, and so it becomes very obvious that they're actually not interested in you. So in that context, that would actually be a sign of disinterest. Like, she's actually disqualifying you and saying she's occupied with this other man. Or if she's just blatantly posting another man, like she's actually posting him onto her IG grid, like they have pictures together, she's publicly promoting him on her Instagram. Those are all signs that she actually really likes that guy and she's not trying to be with you. But let's also talk about the other side of it, which is you guys are hanging out and she just kind of subtly mentions that there was this guy that was out with her. It's kind of like this incidental detail that's in her story. And I would actually consider this a test. I think girls kind of do this unconsciously just to see how you're gonna respond to the situation. So my advice would be, if it's very early on in the dating and you're not in a position where you can even have a conversation about the other men that she's talking about, you need to just act pretty much indifferent about the whole thing. Don't get jealous. Don't start bringing up questions about who's this other guy. Just understand that we're not there yet in terms of dating. And so I would just not make it a big deal, almost be oblivious to it and just keep going in the conversation. That's something that you guys can actually have a conversation about later on in the dating and courtship if things start to progress and it's becoming more and more serious. And that can be a difficult moment, especially if you really like the girl and you're hanging out with her and you guys have been texting and stuff and she brings up that other guy. It's like a little knife to the heart, a tiny one, but it does hurt in those moments. And so to be calm and non-reactive, especially if you haven't been through a situation like that, that can be a little bit challenging. So I'm gonna put this one under the medium level test. Let's move into the next one, which is gonna be what happens when she's pulling away. Now this can happen at different phases. This could be with a girl you just started talking to and now she's kind of hot and cold, like she's texting you and everything's good, and then suddenly she just starts kind of pulling away. This can also happen on a night out, like you guys are actually just hanging out at the bar or the club or the place that you met her and the interaction's going good, and then at some point she actually just pulls away and drifts off and gets this like hot girl ADHD where she goes and then talks to her friend and you're kind of just sitting there like a dumbass, like twiddling your thumbs, like hoping that she's gonna come back into the interaction. In both cases, I would recommend that you do not over pursue and try to chase after the girl. Because if you're texting the girl and she starts getting cold, you don't wanna start double and triple texting or starting to reach out asking if everything's okay. Understand that in those moments, she actually has a lower level of interest towards you. And the last thing you wanna do is start chasing after her in those moments. So you gotta let it chill, give it a couple of days, maybe even up to a week if she hasn't responded to the previous messages. And then if nothing else, you can either send a new message to her like 4 to 7 days later, some type of value text, sending like her a picture of something cool that you're doing to try to like re-spark the conversation. Or you could also, from my social media guys, try to bait her into commenting on your story, because there are some women out there that if you didn't get a response from her on text, but you're actually doing things on IG and she watches your stories and stuff, she'll actually comment on your story, and then you guys could have a side conversation going on Instagram where you can kind of reheat it that way instead of having to double and triple text on normal text message. And it's actually a similar concept during a night out. If you're talking to the more attractive girls in the venues, it's not uncommon that they know other people there, and inevitably they will get distracted and start to peel off from you at some point. When that happens, you just play it cool. You don't follow after her. You don't reopen her while she's she's talking to that person, let it breathe. Give it a second, let it chill. I would actually recommend if she drifted off, you should actually do the same. You should pivot away and start socializing with other people. You can then reopen her later, and you don't need some formal reopen. You just kind of reopen a conversation, probably from one of the previous conversation threads that you guys had going on earlier. You don't bring it up, you don't call it out, you don't say anything about it. You're equally oblivious. And I've seen a lot of dudes go wrong with this because they'll start hovering over the girl, waiting for her to be done with that interaction. And the girl sees you guys, like she sees out of the corner of her eye that you are standing there and you're hovering and you're waiting. And keep in mind, you're in a nighttime environment. So you're just standing there alone, nervous, getting more in your head, and your status is going down further and further and further. Instead, be a cool, social dude who doesn't make it a big deal. Pivot away, start opening other people, and ideally you're having just as much fun without her. If you can do that, it's not uncommon, she'll actually start to drift back into your vicinity. So give it space, start socializing, see if she comes back. If she does come back, you can just casually reopen her. If not, give it a little bit and you can always reopen when there's a more opportune time later on in the night. And in my opinion, these tests are relatively difficult. If you're dealing with very attractive women that you really like and you've been texting and they start going cold, it can suck because it does start to put you in your head, honestly. And same thing with the nightclub. If you're talking to the girl and she's one of the most attractive girls in the club and you guys have had a good time going on and she pulls away, that can really eat away at you if you haven't been through this before. So I'm gonna categorize both of these under the medium tier level test. I will also say that on a more advanced level, ideally, you are the one that's actually testing the woman. Or if you wanna fast track your social life, your social confidence, your dating life, so that way you could actually have that abundant dream dating life you've always wanted, click the link down below, check out the brand new coaching programs I got going on for 2025. Let's move into the next one, which is when the girl is being dry with you. Now, personally, I wouldn't actually consider this a test. I would actually look at this as low interest or maybe even disinterest. So on an interaction, if you're talking to a girl and you're assuming the burden of the conversation, you're trying to carry it and she's giving you short one-word answers over and over again, that's just disinterest. That is not a test, and there's nothing you can really do other than still try to have fun. Don't get in your head at the fact that she's not really responding. Give it a couple more attempts to try to pump some life into the interaction. Sometimes you could say something funny, or just you not being so fazed by her lack of engagement will allow the set to pop open if you say the right thing. But also a lot of the times it might not go anywhere, in which case you just smile and say, anyway, have a good night, and you move on from it. That's all that is. And it's similar in text conversations too. I see a lot of guys that they're like, Kyle, my text conversations really suck. I need to get better with text game. And I open their conversations and I notice from the moment they got the girl's number, the text convo was dry. A lot of the times that's not really the texting. It can be, but a lot of it also is just the way you ran the interaction. Like the girl just has low interest for you. She's not that into you, and that's why she's responding unenthusiastically. So I'm actually gonna not put this one as a test. It can be a tiny percent of the time, but that's some sort of like weird mind game in my opinion if the girl's legitimately trying to do that as a test. I would say vast majority of the time, it could be low interest, potentially even no interest, and she's just being polite. And we're gonna put this under not a test / disinterest. Let's move into the next one, which is holding her purse. And this is an interesting one. It's not one in my opinion that happens that frequently. It's probably happened a couple of times during the night out, and it actually happened to me once during a day game interaction. And this doesn't necessarily need to be just with holding a purse. It's when the girl asks you to do a favor for her that will ultimately make you look beta or simpy. And my thoughts on this test is you need to just do an evaluation, because is it something that she legitimately needs help with? Does she legitimately need a favor? Like, is she holding multiple things and it would actually benefit her for a second if you were holding the bag so she could move something over? Because if so, that's not you being beta. Okay, that's you just doing a favor for the woman because it would actually help her. And I know there's guys out there that would be like,
I'm not gonna hold the purse for her. That's like something Simpson did.
That's actually bullshit, bro. That's you being insecure and afraid of doing a task for a woman. All right, there's actually nothing wrong with holding the purse. It has everything to do with the frame that you're presenting when you come into that interaction. If you're totally secure with your masculinity, if you don't give a fuck about that thing, and this actually goes for a lot of these shit tests, if you genuinely have a confident frame with this and you're not insecure and you're looking at it from a perspective of there's nothing wrong with me holding the purse, I'm legitimately just doing a favor for her, who gives a fuck, man? If you think it's weird and you're insecure about it and you think it's gonna
lose attraction because I'm the little beta guy holding the purse,
then it actually will. That's the reality. If you think it, then yes, it will be that way. If you're actually secure about it, it's not a big deal. You can hold the purse. I would say the majority of the time, that's actually what's going on. The girl is just asking for you to do a favor for her. There's a tiny percentage of the time where the girl might be trolling you, and what she's asking you to do is like really unreasonable. And the way that I would handle that is I would just call it out. Like I would actually still do the favor for her, but I would just call out the thing. So if she's asking me to hold a purse for whatever reason, I would still do it, because I think that not doing it out of fear of being perceived as beta is beta in my opinion. So I would hold the purse and be like, okay, I don't think you really need me to hold it, but honestly, I don't even give a fuck. I could rock this, right? You say it as a joke. So you're non-reactive, it's not a big deal. You hold the thing, and if after a certain amount of time, you really feel like she's actually just trolling you, at some point you'd be like, okay, all jokes aside here, take the purse back, okay? I don't need this. That's how you could handle that. It's a secure, confident way of going through that situation. Don't be afraid to do the favor for the woman either. And I don't really think that this one is that difficult of a test. You pretty much just need to do it and handle it from a secure position. If it gets unreasonable, you call it out, and after a certain amount of time, you give her the purse back. That's all it is. So I'm gonna put this one under the light test category. Kind of a stupid test, but was worth putting in here. Let's move into the next one, which is gonna be what happens when she's insulting you or making fun of you. I've responded to these type of tests different ways when I was at different phases in my journey. So if I look back in my late 20s, the way that I would handle a lot of shit tests was by what they call agree and exaggerate. So if she says something like, wow, your shoes are really beat up, I think you need some new ones, you can agree with her, but you exaggerate it so much that it's like, honestly, like playful. It would be something like, I know, right? Like, look, if I actually pull this flap down, my toe is actually like popping out of the thing. So the main concept is you're just unreactive about the thing. Like, it's clearly not a big deal, and the comment that she made has no negative impact on how you feel about yourself, which is how you handle every test, by the way. In one way or another, you need to indicate that the test is not a big deal to you, you're non-reactive, and it doesn't have a negative impact on your current emotional state, which may take time if you're not used to handling tests. But so one way to do it is agree and exaggerate, and that was the main way that I started in my journey, because I didn't know how else to do it. I didn't have a very confident frame, but I could take that technique, and when someone would throw something at me, I could logically utilize this concept. And so that's what I would recommend a lot of you guys to do. Now, as I get older, what I notice is the way that I actually handle tests, I don't feel the need to do that, because I actually just have a very confident frame and mindset, and I've been through all of this so many times. What I actually find myself doing is I just smile and I kind of look at the girl as if she's like saying something silly. That's just what I've noticed. Like, I genuinely just don't take the girl so seriously if they say something. And so one way is to agree and exaggerate. The other way is you genuinely are confident enough to the point where you don't even feel the need to prove yourself about the whole thing. It doesn't even need acknowledgement. You're like actually just unfazed with it. That's for a certain type of dude who's a little bit more on the stoic side, a little bit more on the masculine side. So either way can work. It just depends on where you're at in your journey. The main thing is you just don't want to qualify yourself to the girl in those moments, right? So you don't want to show that it has a negative impact on your emotional state, or you don't want to start getting apologetic about whatever the thing she pointed out about you, or you don't want to like ask for reassurance from her, or show her that you're insecure about the thing that she just pointed out. And I'm gonna put this under the medium level tier. The other side of this though, because I did also say that she's insulting you. So a lot of the times they're kind of trolling you and throwing jabs at you. There's also a different level where the girl is just straight up being disrespectful. Like, they're just actually insulting you. Now, that is not a shit test. That is not in the medium tier, and that is going under the disrespectful tier, okay? If a girl blatantly disrespects you when you're in a night out, you just take a deep breath. You still don't emotionally react. You don't need to combat it and go back at her. You could give her like a little bit of a look and you just say, have a good night. And you just pivot away. That's all it is, and you move on. If you've been dating the girl and she's disrespecting you, we need to sit down and actually have a conversation about the whole thing. I wouldn't just eject out of the relationship, or even if it's early on in the dating. Women will disrespect you at some point if you're dating them, and that's okay. Be prepared. You're not gonna be fully in sync with your partner indefinitely. There will come some type of disagreement or disrespectful thing may happen. It's on you to stay non-reactive, stay calm, call out the thing, and then you're gonna need to sit down and have a non-confrontational conversation about the whole thing so you guys can actually get in sync about these things. Let's move into the next one, which is the I have a boyfriend, or I'm not interested, or you're not my type. And this is one of the most common questions I get asked. What do I do if she says I have a boyfriend? How do I overcome that shit test? Understand that 99% of the time, that is not a shit test. That is blatant disinterest. She is not interested in you. Some girls will say, you're not my type. Some girls will just say, I'm not interested. Some girls will say, I'm sorry, that's very sweet of you, I have a boyfriend. No matter what it is, majority of the time, you want to just take that as the girl politely declining you. You don't take it personal. She doesn't want to say, hey, I'm not into you, I'm not rejecting you. She'd rather just say, hey, I actually am talking to somebody else, and because of this, I'm not interested in you. And there's so many dudes out there that'll say,
but I know she doesn't have a boyfriend, so like, what's the answer to overcome that?
Understand that whether or not she actually has a boyfriend, it's kind of irrelevant. She's not saying that so you could come back with some super clever, witty thing to like prove, oh, you caught me, no, I actually don't. Wait, what's your name? That's not what she's looking for you to do. Regardless, she's just trying to be polite and end the conversation as quickly as possible. And for that reason, she's saying, thank you, but I'm already talking to somebody. And so that's all it is. You just move on. That's really all it is. Is there that tiny 1% of girl that's like really just on some weird thing who's trolling you and having fun with it because it's her one night out with the girls and she's just having fun with it? Yes, that can happen. You'll be able to tell by the delivery and the tonality. Majority of the women are just saying it in a genuine way, and you can tell by the delivery. If the girl's saying it in a very, very funny way and she's already displayed high levels of attraction towards you, that is that 1% where you could stay in the interaction and maybe not have a crazy conversation about her boyfriend. You just kind of like dodge the thing, you keep the conversation going, and then things move on. And I have had that happen before. If you play it right later on, the girl will either admit she didn't have a boyfriend, or she's been talking to some dude, but she's not really interested in him, and she kind of knows it's on its way out, and that's why she was showing you the interest already, but she did kind of throw it out there just so she doesn't feel like she was lying about the whole thing. So majority of the time though, it's just genuine disinterest. Be aware that there's that tiny, tiny 1% where she's already showing high levels of attraction towards you, and it's typically in like a funny little way where she just kind of throws it in there. So that's the one-off situation, but majority of the time, I'm just gonna classify this as genuine disinterest. Let's move into the next one, which is the girl disagreeing with you. And despite her just having a different opinion than you, a lot of dudes will actually turn this into a test and fail the test that wasn't even really a test. And the way they do that is because the girl has a different opinion, and then you start to switch your opinion because you are afraid of having confrontation or having disagreement. And so the girl states a completely different opinion, and that gets you in your head about your own perspective, and now you don't have a spine or a backbone in the interaction, and you start questioning your own opinion as a means of wanting to agree or seek rapport with the woman. So this wasn't actually a test on the front end, but a lot of guys turn this into a test because they're afraid of disagreeing with the girl, not realizing that as a man, I think it's actually important to be very opinionated and confident and decisive, okay? Don't be afraid of having a disagreement or having a different opinion than the woman. Now, obviously, you don't want to turn it into a full-blown fight, but just don't cave and start switching your opinion just at the fact that the girl has a disagreement with you. And this term in the pickup niche is called supplicating. You start supplicating to the girl as a means of wanting her approval of her perception of you. To overcome this one, you just want to have your own opinion. Don't be afraid of disagreeing. I'm going to put this in the light category. Let's move into the next test. And this is going to be when you've already been talking to the girl. You're either in the first couple weeks of dating, or this could even be in a slightly longer term relationship when the girl starts fishing for apologies from you. This ties into similar concepts as holding the purse, in a sense that I know a lot of men out there that think it's beta for apologizing to a woman that you've been talking to, and that you should never apologize because it could be perceived as you displaying weakness and you're pretty much admitting you were wrong. And because of that, it creates this opportunity for the girl to then lean into you more and actually start a bigger fight. I completely disagree with this because I've been on the other side of this. I've been the guy that would not apologize. That was very stubborn, that was very hard-hearted, that it was my way or the highway kind of a thing. And yes, when you first meet women, you'll come off very confident and you'll come off very like dominant, and you'll be leading the interactions. But in my opinion, long term, I don't think there's anything wrong with admitting that you were wrong. You just don't do it from a very weak, insecure place. Nothing wrong with a man admitting that he was incorrect about something, owning it in a confident way, and actually giving the girl a genuine apology. There's so many dudes that are jaded by the red pill that are afraid of apologizing for a woman. There's a difference between her fishing for an apology in a slightly like manipulative way, but I would say a lot of times if the girl actually just wants a genuine apology, there's nothing wrong with you admitting you were wrong from a grown, confident perspective and apologizing to her. okay? That can be difficult for some people. That was actually a very difficult one for me because I had a lot of ego involved in my pickup identity and having success with women, and I was the coach. And so for me, it was actually a difficult one to do, especially if you're jaded by red pill and you've been in the pickup industry for quite some time. And because of those reasons and my own personal experience, I'm actually gonna put this into the medium category. For some men, I could see this being more in the light tier, just depending on where you're at in your own journey. Now let's move into the next test, which is the girl is arguing with you. Now, this is most likely gonna be when you guys are already dating or already in a relationship, because the first couple of dates, you guys shouldn't already be fighting or genuinely like arguing. That would be a very big concerning thing if you guys are fighting a lot very, very early on. I'm assuming we've already been dating for weeks, months, maybe even years. You're invested in a relationship at this point and the woman is arguing with you. All right, this can be very difficult too, especially if she's starting an argument with you. She's on her period or something happened that she's not happy about, and then you start to get kind of riled up in the thing, and then before you know it, it turns into a fight. It turns into this full-blown argument. It becomes this very big fight, and there's nothing worse than being with the girl that you've been dating or are even in a relationship with, and you guys start arguing. It's one of the most frustrating things. It takes away all your mental bandwidth from your day-to-day, and you're just also not happy about the relationship in those moments. And it's almost like sometimes you may need to get back in sync with her just to feel better about the other stuff that's going on in your day. So it can be a very debilitating position to be in when you're constantly arguing with your partner. And for that reason, I'm actually gonna put this under the more difficult, I would say this is like a very difficult test. I wouldn't say this is a girl blatantly shit testing you, but this is a test that you're going to experience when it comes to dating. It's just a different dynamic. And so the things that I would recommend doing to overcome this is, number one, communicating with your partner regularly about what's going on in the relationship. And this goes against a lot of red pill theory about communicating how you're feeling about everything. But again, if you're doing it from a confident position and you could sit down with a woman and talk about what's been going on in the week, what are the things that she did or I did that made the other person feel really appreciated or cared for? What were the things that each other did that was maybe disrespectful or not really tolerated or made the other person feel not appreciated? I think that is extremely important to do on a weekly basis with the person you're dating, because these small things, when they're not communicated, they have a compounding effect that can lead to a massive argument later on down the road. So one of the biggest ways to prevent this is having that check-in with your partner. And the other tool that you're gonna wanna utilize is meditation. You need to practice meditating on a daily basis, because that is going to teach you the skill set of feeling an emotional trigger, having a thought, and instead of getting lost in the thought and letting it affect your emotional state, you can catch it, bring yourself back to center, and with your breath, remain present and calm. And that is so important when you're interacting with women. Women will test you, women will trigger you, women will create these emotional impulses for the positive and for the negative with you. And if you just get lost in your emotions with a girl, especially when it comes to arguing, you are really in for a nightmare of a relationship, okay? It's on you as the dude to be stoic, to be grounded, to be able to realize what's going on, keep your cool, call out the thing, and then have a normal, civilized, non-confrontational conversation about it. You take a potential argument, you de-escalate it, and then you lead the conversation the way it needs to go properly. And part of that ties back to the previous point is you may need to apologize depending on what's going on in the situation. So this one, in my opinion, is one of the most difficult ones. I've struggled with this in my own relationships. And this is not a small thing. This is a very big thing. And it's one of the most important concepts if you really want to get in sync with your partner to have a long-term fulfilling relationship. And for that reason, I'm putting this under the most difficult level. Let's move into the next test, which is the girl saying, we're not hooking up tonight. We're not having sex tonight. I'm not that easy is a slightly different variation, or I'm not that type of girl is another kind of variation to this. This is one of the first tests I ever experienced in my pickup journey. It was the first girl that I had ever brought home after my very first relationship ended. I was barely even studying pickup at the time. I kind of got lucky with the interaction itself through mutual friends, and we ended up back at my house, and we got home and she laid on my bed and she said, we're not having sex tonight. And I remember thinking in my mind, like, why did she even say that? That was kind of weird. I didn't understand it at the time, and I didn't actually do anything wrong in that moment. I just thought it was kind of weird. I didn't feel the need to prove myself or apologize or explain myself about any of it. I just kind of changed topic. But where I went wrong was then we started making out, and then I just kept trying to escalate and escalate and escalate, and she would keep moving my hands away saying, no, 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 not tonight, or no, I'm not that kind of girl. And then we would chill for a little bit, and then she would try to start making out with me, and then I would just pounce on her again, and then she would kind of put the brakes on it again. Understand that when you're in these moments, whether it's during the escalation process and girls are putting the brakes on you, or you guys are just kind of hanging out and maybe you're in the bedroom and it's getting hot and heavy and she says, we're not having sex tonight, it's on you to just play it cool. You gotta be chill, man. You gotta be really chill. If she says we're not having sex tonight, you say, hey, it's all good. No pressure, no expectation, right? That's all it is. You don't need to say anything beyond that. You can give her reassurance in that moment, but just take a mental note that she brought it up, because what does that mean? That means she's actually thinking about it. So you're actually a lot closer to the finish line than you may think you are. Like, had I have just played it cool that night and not escalated so fast and not be so thirsty to try to get to the finish line, but instead I just played it cool, chilled out a little bit, we vibed a little bit more, created a deeper connection, maybe slowly escalated a little bit, teased a little bit, touched a little bit, pulled back a little bit to give her security, I probably could have gotten to the finish line if I gave her that reassurance, that comfort, that connection, all of those things that she needed to slowly get her to the finish line. That's how you handle that test properly. But if you haven't been through it before and you're with a girl and you're really horny and you just want to do the thing, it could be a difficult moment if you haven't experienced it, but it's a very easy test to pass. You just play it cool, you don't act thirsty, you chill out, and you can slowly build it up. And for that reason, I'm categorizing this one as a light test. Moving into the next test, this is when the girl says, I bet you do this with all the girls. Or one other one I've seen is that if you're already dating a girl and things are going smooth, she might say something like, oh, is this where you bring all of your girls? Or how many girls have you gone up and approached? Or do you just go up and talk to a lot of girls? Or I bet you do this a lot, huh? You'll experience this one way or another. It could be on the initial interaction or if you've been dating a girl. And this is actually a pretty simple test to pass. You just either, again, you want to agree and exaggerate it. So that would be something like, no, not every girl. I mean, you're probably just like, what, 97 today, 98, 99, something like that. You agree and you just kind of like stretch it out to a ridiculous number. Or again, the other way that I would do it, which happened earlier on this year, I think, while I was on the Insta date. Oh, so do you go up and talk to a lot of women? And the way that I handled that is I just looked at her with a smile and didn't make it a big deal, didn't explain myself really. And I just said, no, honestly, I'm not like running around the streets like that. I just saw you, I thought you had a very interesting look. And I was like, oh, she's cute, let's go meet her really quickly. So either agree and exaggerate, or you could just, in a non-reactive way, keep it cool. This is a pretty common test, but it's also a very easy test to pass because you don't really need to do much other than exaggerate it, or you just kind of keep it short and sweet. So for that reason, I'm putting this under the light level test. Now let's move on to the next one, which is the girl's showing up late or she's continuously on her phone. And these are both in the same type of category because I think these things are okay if they're happening a certain way, but if it goes beyond a certain amount, then it actually, in my opinion, just becomes disrespectful or is just kind of like disinterest. So let's look at both situations. So we're supposed to hang out on a date and she's running 5, 10, 15 minutes late. And maybe she even texts me letting me know she's actually gonna be late. I don't think that that's a big deal. I don't even think that that's a test, honestly. I think the girls just in general run late a lot of the time and you should actually expect that to be happening. It's not a big deal. I don't think it's that important either. And maybe that's a skewed perspective because I'm typically not very, very punctual a lot of the time, honestly. So I kind of understand the other side of it. But again, if she's actually putting an effort or is letting you know that she's kind of running late, I don't think it's a big deal. And same thing, if you're hanging out with her and she's on her phone a little bit, I don't think it's a big deal, especially if she's like, oh, I need to just send this thing, right? That's different than her just kind of like scrolling and not paying attention to you. So on the one hand, if it's just in a small amount of moderation, I don't think it's a big deal. It's not even a test. I don't even think you need to really call it out, honestly, unless it's continuously happening. You can have a talk about it. Or if it happens an exaggerated amount, like she shows up like really late or she's just barely even responding to you. In those cases, I would call out the behavior without getting aggressive or confrontational. You just call it out, you have a quick talk about it, and then she's either going to change the behavior, in which case great, or she doesn't. Like if it keeps happening and it's becoming a bigger and bigger problem, we need to sit down and have another talk about it. And that second time, the talk or the punishment or the way that conversation is gonna happen, it needs to be at a higher magnitude to stress the importance of this thing happening additional times. She's either going to adjust or it's going to just happen 1, 2, 3 times. And if it's happening continuously, and I would just categorize this as just straight up disrespect. And I would honestly say that any of the ones that you see in the disrespect category, those are times where you need to sit down with the girl and have a conversation about the thing and why it's not acceptable and what we're gonna do to get in sync to prevent this thing from happening again. That's important that you fix that. You don't just sit there and let it eat away at you and then later on you explode about the whole thing. Now let's move on to the next test, which is the girl is starting to create a jealousy plot line. So this typically would happen when you're out in a nighttime environment and you're talking to her, but then at some point she starts talking to another man in front of you. Now, if it's right in front of you and you guys are really far into the interaction and she's actually showing him high levels of interest, I would actually categorize that as either disrespect, depending on how much interest she's shown you, or she's just showing you very low levels of interest, like she has no interest in you. That's one side, but the other side is it's already been going really well and she has displayed interest in you, and then at some point in the night, she peels off and then she's starting to talk to some other dude and you could tell that they're kind of flirting or hitting it off a little bit. Now, I don't know if she's deliberately creating this jealousy plotline for you. It could just be happening coincidentally that she kind of was feeling you that night, but there's also this other guy that maybe she was already talking to that she's also feeling. In which case, it's similar situation to what I was talking about before when she pulls away. You don't go up to them, you don't confront her on it, you don't get butthurt about it. You just kind of pivot and you start socializing with other people. I would ideally even be talking to other women. You don't need to make out with them or anything like that to get back at her, but you can at least start socializing with other people. If she peels off of that guy and then at some point she's back in your vicinity, in which case great, reopen her. Or if she starts going too far with that other guy, like you're like, ah, that's actually like kind of like slutty of her to be like that on that guy after we were already talking, just take it as a mental note that you just dodged a bullet, that this girl's like overly promiscuous, and that's not a good sign of a woman that you want to be with anyway. In which case I would still go according to plan, start socializing with other people. If she went too far with that guy and then she comes back later, you could just bring it up and you don't need to continue talking to her. Or if you do still get with her, do not take that woman seriously because she already displayed high levels of promiscuity, all right? And that's not really something you want in a partner. So if you want to keep it as a casual thing or a late night booty call, understand that that girl will be out flirting and hooking up with other dudes as you continue to see her, because she already just displayed massive red flags about that whole idea. And because of all the subtle nuances that could be intertwined into these situations, like it can be difficult when there's other dudes out at the nightclub and you're talking to a girl and you really like, and now you're battling between them and you got to reopen. And you might even have this guy coming into your interaction. There's a lot going on in those situations. I'm gonna put this one somewhere between medium and difficult, because like this could be a very difficult situation if you don't know what you're doing. I know a lot of men will get in their head, get insecure, get butthurt, start displaying like weak behavior where they end up losing the girl to the other man. And so for that reason, it can be pretty difficult. So I understand this one is a challenging one, and I'm gonna place this probably just below the most difficult level. Let's move into the next one, which is when you've already been dating a girl and things are going well, and now she wants to spend more time with you, right? She ends up sleeping over, and then you guys hang out the whole next day, or you guys go on a date and then you end up staying up till like really, really late, or maybe you haven't been giving her that much time and now she's saying like, you should spend more time with me, we should go do this. And this can be, in my opinion, one of the most difficult tests, because it's not an intentional, let me shit test this guy to see his value. The girl genuinely wants more time with you because she really likes you and she really enjoys you, and you guys are probably already having sex and things are going really good, and you want to spend all the time in the world with her too, because things are going really good. And in my opinion, that's why it's one of the most challenging tests, because a lot of men I know, they start dating a girl and then all of their self-development, their whole routine, their productivity, all of these other aspects of their life start going to shit because they start over-compromising themselves as a means of hanging out with the girl. And I also want to say that I don't think it's a bad thing to spend more time with a woman. However, you don't want to compromise your self-development journey, your business, your career, your purpose to hang out with a woman. So when done properly, you can still crush your entire self-development, your business, your brain, your career. Like you can do all of those things and still make time to spend quality time with a woman, even if that means multiple times a week. Like I genuinely believe that, and I've done that. I've also been the guy though that lost everything because I just let everything go to shit just because I could hang out with the girl and spend more time with her and keep having sex with her. This is a very slippery slope, because you're gonna start compromising yourself too much, and then you actually lay a bad expectation of the dynamic between us, and then later on you're gonna have to have like a hard conversation with her, or most men will even try to take it out on the girl, or they think it's her fault when really you were just a bad leader and you were irresponsible with your time. So you need to be aware of what are your goals, what do you have going on throughout the week, how much time have you been spending with a woman, are you spending quality time, are you guys bullshitting doing fucking nothing, is this a girl that you're not even really into like that and you're just kind of dating seeing her, even though it's casual, you're spending a lot of time with her casually and you don't even see it going anywhere, that's the worst. You're losing so much of your time with a girl that you're not even really into just because it's comfortable and you guys are hooking up. That's probably the worst out of all of these. So you do need to be aware, you need to be able to run the relationship properly, and you gotta be honest with yourself about your productivity levels versus the time spent with the woman. And for that reason, in my opinion, this is the most difficult one. I'm putting this at the highest part in the list, especially when you're dating a girl that you really like and things are going really, really well. And let's move into the last one, which is when the girl texts you when you're trying to set up a date with her and she says something like, I'm busy, or I don't know when I'm gonna be free, or my schedule is kind of chaotic, or I don't know if that's gonna work, let me get back to you. Or maybe you guys even plan the date and then it's coming up and she ends up flaking on it, saying I'm busy now. Now this could be two different things, because the girl, when she actually cancels or flakes on you, is she genuinely apologetic? Is she being sincere about the whole thing? And is she offering another potential day or time where we could reschedule this thing? That is, in my opinion, a very light test. I wouldn't even call that a test. She just had something that actually came up, and in which case you say, hey, no worries, and then you move towards the next available times that she presented along with your schedule. Problem solved there. Now let's look at the opposite side, which is she's just kind of low interest. She's not even trying to reschedule with you, and she kind of just declined the invitation. That is not a test. That is genuine disinterest. The girl is not even trying to reschedule with you. You just say, hey, no worries, not a big deal. And then you could keep the conversation going a little bit, but if she's being dry, it goes back to what I was saying earlier on in this video, like give it some space. You could send a value pic or video later on in the week after a couple of days went by to try to reheat the conversation. And then from there, you could try to reschedule. You could also try to heat it up through Instagram stories and stuff for my guys that are more on social media. Or if nothing else, the conversation will fizzle out because again, the girl just has low interest and you're thinking it's a test when it's really not. Those are all of the most common ways women will test you and how you should be handling those tests. I will also say that on a more advanced level, ideally, you are the one that's actually testing the woman. All right, and if you want to see live demonstrations of how you could do that in interactions, you're going to want to check out this video right here. Or if you want to fast track your social life, your social confidence, your dating life, so that way you could actually have that abundant dream dating life you've always wanted, click the link down below. Check out the brand new coaching programs I got going on for 2025. That's all for this video, guys. Talk soon. Peace out.